He threatened to destroy my family if I kept my pregnancy. For years later, my twin boys crashed his charity gala asking, "Where's our daddy?" And his fiancée's face went white. The crystal chandeliers of the Seattle Grand Fairmont cast expensive light across 500 of the city's wealthiest elite when two small voices cut through the chamber music and polite conversation like a knife through silk. Excuse me, we need to find someone." Every head turned toward the entrance where two 4-year-old boys stood hand in hand, their dress shirts slightly wrinkled from the car ride, their dark eyes scanning the crowd with determined focus. The taller one, bolder, stepped onto the small platform meant for auction displays and raised his voice with the unself-conscious clarity only children possess. "We're looking for our daddy. Our mama is here somewhere, and we know our daddy is supposed to be here too." A woman in a champagne-colored gown laughed nervously. "Darling, I think you're lost. Where are your parents?" The second boy, quieter but equally determined, held up a photograph. His small hands shook slightly, but his voice stayed steady. "We're not lost. We found the invitation at our mama's office. It had this address. We called a car service like we've seen mama do." He held the photograph higher, and several guests leaned in to look. It showed a younger woman with warm brown skin and bright eyes standing beside a tall man in a tuxedo, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at some corporate event. "This is our mama from before. The man with her is our daddy. His name is Garrett Ashford. Is he here?" The silence that crashed over that ballroom was so complete you could hear champagne bubbles bursting in crystal flutes. Near the auction display, a man went absolutely white. His hand, holding a glass of scotch, began to shake so violently the ice rattled. The woman beside him, elegant and composed in navy silk, turned to stare at the children with an expression that cycled rapidly from confusion to calculation to something that looked like pure terror. The bolder boy spotted the man's reaction and pointed directly at him. "That's him. That's the man from the picture. Are you Garrett Ashford? Are you our daddy?" A woman pushed through the crowd then, her midnight blue gown flowing behind her, her face a mixture of horror and fierce protectiveness. She reached the boys and dropped to her knees, pulling them both against her chest. "Owen, Levi, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Portland with Judith." The quieter boy, Owen, touched her face gently. "We wanted to find our daddy, Mama. You're always sad when you think about him. We thought if we found him, maybe you wouldn't be sad anymore." The woman, Kendall, looked up then. Her eyes locked onto the white-faced man across the ballroom, and the weight of 4 years of silence pressed down on that space between them like a physical force. Garrett Ashford stared at the woman he had once threatened, at the children he had demanded she abort, and felt his entire world fracture into pieces too small to ever reassemble. "Kendall," he whispered. His voice came out strangled, broken. "Is it? Are they?" The elegant woman beside him grabbed his arm hard enough to leave marks. "Garrett, who are these children? What is happening right now?" But Kendall was already standing, her arms wrapped protectively around her son's, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom with diamond-hard clarity. Don't you dare ask questions you have no right to answers for." The bolder twin, Levi, stepped forward, his 4-year-old face confused but determined. "We just want to know our daddy. We're 4 years old. Our birthday is June 15th. Mama says our daddy doesn't know we exist because sometimes grown-ups make things complicated. But we're not complicated. We're just kids who want to know their daddy. And that is where this story truly begins. Not at this moment of collision in a glittering ballroom, but 4 years earlier, on a Tuesday evening in October, when a young woman stood in a corner office 42 floors above Seattle and heard the words that would shatter her entire world. Some threats change your life forever. But what happens when the man who tried to destroy you comes face to face with the children he never knew existed? This is the story of Kendall Rivers, a woman who was given an envelope of cash and told to erase her pregnancy, who disappeared for 4 years and built an empire from nothing. But when her twin sons decided to find their father themselves, everything she had carefully protected came crashing down in the most public way possible. Before we dive into Kendall's incredible journey, I need you to do something for me. If you believe in second chances, hit that like button right now. If you have ever had to rebuild your life from scratch, this story is for you. And here is what I want to know. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below with your city or country, or just type "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline." Let's build a community of people who believe that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise. And trust me, Kendall's rise is something you won't forget. Now let me take you back to where this all began. For years before that ballroom confrontation, Kendall Rivers was 26 years old and convinced she had finally found where she belonged. She worked as the executive assistant to Garrett Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries, one of Seattle's fastest-growing tech investment firms. Her desk sat just outside his corner office on the 42nd floor of a glass tower that reflected Puget Sound on sunny days and disappeared into clouds when it rained. Kendall was good at her job. No, she was exceptional. She anticipated Garrett's needs before he voiced them, managed his impossible schedule with military precision, and had a photographic memory for details that made her invaluable. She knew how he took his coffee. 2 sugars, no cream, but only before noon. After noon, he switched to black. She knew he was left-handed and preferred to review contracts in hard copy rather than on screen. She knew the exact tone his voice took before he was about to fire someone, and she learned to clear his schedule for 30 minutes afterward because he always needed to walk it off. What started as professional respect had shifted into something else during late nights preparing for board meetings, during business trips where they were the only 2 awake on red-eye flights, during moments when his hand would brush hers passing documents and linger just a second too long. 6 months into working for him, Garrett had kissed her in his office after everyone else had gone home. The city lights spread below them like scattered diamonds, and he had cupped her face with both hands and whispered that she was the most remarkable woman he had ever met. "I shouldn't," he had said. "You work for me. This crosses every professional line." "Then don't," Kendall had replied, even though her heart was hammering. But he did kiss her, and she kissed him back. And for 6 months after that, they existed in a secret world of stolen moments and careful discretion. Kendall knew about Genevieve Lancaster. She knew about the engagement that had been announced 3 months into their affair. She had been the one to order the flowers Garrett sent to his fiancée, had been the one to manage his calendar around wedding planning appointments. But Garrett had looked at her with those dark eyes and explained that the marriage was purely business. Genevieve's family controls 3 critical board seats, he had told her, his fingers tracing patterns on her wrist. "Without their votes, my company is vulnerable to a hostile takeover. The engagement is strategic, nothing more. I don't love her, Kendall. I love you." Kendall had wanted so desperately to believe him. And for 6 months, she did. She convinced herself that love mattered more than timing, that eventually Garrett would find a way to break the engagement, that she just needed to be patient. Then came the pregnancy test. She had been feeling off for 2 weeks, exhausted in a way that sleep didn't fix, nauseous at random times, her body feeling foreign to itself. She bought the test on her lunch break, took it in the bathroom of a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, and watched 2 pink lines appear with the slow inevitability of fate. The ultrasound appointment came a week later. She went alone to a clinic in a neighborhood where no one would recognize her. The technician, a kind woman with graying hair, moved the wand across Kendall's abdomen and then stopped, staring at the screen with a smile. "Well," she said, "are you ready for an adventure?" Kendall's throat closed. "What do you mean?" "Twins." The technician turned the screen so Kendall could see. 2 distinct heartbeats. 2 little beans. Double blessing, sweetheart. Kendall stared at the screen through tears she couldn't control. 2 babies. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 futures that suddenly felt more real than anything else in her world. She spent 3 weeks rehearsing how to tell Garrett. She imagined his face softening with joy, imagined him pulling her close and promising they would figure it out together. She imagined him finally ending the sham engagement, imagined them building a real life together. Reality destroyed those fantasies with brutal efficiency. It was a Tuesday evening in October when Kendall finally gathered the courage to tell him. She waited until the office emptied, until the custodial staff finished their rounds, until it was just the 2 of them and the city lights. Garrett was reviewing quarterly projections when she walked into his office. He looked up with that smile he reserved just for her, the one that made her feel like the only person in his universe. "Hey," he said, "I thought you went home an hour ago. I need to talk to you about something." Kendall closed the door behind her. "Something important." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, But she shook her head. She needed to stand for this. Needed to feel solid ground beneath her feet. I'm pregnant. 2 words. 14 letters. An entire world shifting on its axis. Garrett's expression didn't soften. It froze. His eyes went cold in a way she had seen him use on business rivals, on people he was about to crush professionally. How long have you known? 3 weeks. Kendall's hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. I had it confirmed yesterday. It's twins, Garrett. We're having twins. He stood slowly, walked to the window, stared out at the city for a long moment. When he turned back, his face held the kind of calculated emptiness that made her blood run cold. Garrett opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote with quick, decisive strokes, tore out the check, and placed it in an envelope. Then he crossed the space between them and held it out. $75,000. There's a clinic in Portland. Discreet. Professional. They can have you in and out within a few hours. You'll take a week off for recovery. We'll call it a personal emergency. No one needs to know this happened. Kendall stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Her ears were ringing. The office felt like it was tilting. You want me to abort our children? I want you to handle this situation before it becomes a problem. Garrett's voice stayed level, measured. Kendall, I'm getting married in 3 months. Genevieve's family is finalizing the board transition next week. Everything is in place. If this pregnancy becomes public knowledge, if anyone discovers what happened between us, the Lancaster family will pull their support. My company becomes vulnerable to the European takeover I've been fighting for 2 years. Everything I've built collapses. So you're asking me to choose your company over our babies? I'm explaining what will happen if you don't. He moved closer, and she stepped back instinctively. Your mother works at Metropolitan General, doesn't she? Head nurse practitioner in the cardiac unit. It would be unfortunate if questions arose about her handling of medication protocols. A single investigation could cost her not just her position, but her license. Kendall felt like she couldn't breathe. What are you saying? I'm being clear about consequences. Your sister Rachel, the one who just got her permanent teaching contract at Evergreen Elementary. The district is very sensitive about any complaints regarding teacher conduct. One allegation, even unproven, could end her career before it really starts. Stop. And your father's construction company. I know he's over-leveraged on that King County development project. He needs investors to stay confident. One conversation with the right people, and his financing disappears. His business collapses. Decades of work, gone. Tears were streaming down Kendall's face now. You're threatening my family. You're actually threatening to destroy my family if I don't abort your children. Garrett's hand reached out to touch her face with gentleness that felt obscene given his words. I'm making sure you understand the reality of your choices. Take the money, Kendall. Go to the clinic. In 6 months, this will all feel like a bad dream. I can't give you what you want. I can't be the man you need me to be, but I can make sure you're taken care of financially. That has to be enough. She looked at him for a long moment, memorizing the planes of his face, seeing clearly for the first time the man he actually was beneath the man she had wanted him to be. Her hands shaking, she picked up the envelope. Okay. Her voice came out flat, dead. I'll handle it. The relief that flooded his face made her stomach turn. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead like a blessing. I'm sorry it has to be this way. I wish things could be different. So do I, Kendall whispered. She left his office with the envelope clutched against her chest. She rode the elevator down through 42 floors of his glass tower. She walked out into October rain that felt like the sky was weeping on her behalf. Kendall went home to her small Capitol Hill apartment, the one-bedroom place she had been so proud of when she signed the lease 2 years ago. Everything looked different now. The furniture she had carefully selected felt like props in someone else's life. The photographs on her walls seemed to belong to a stranger. She began packing with mechanical efficiency. Clothes folded into suitcases. Toiletries wrapped in towels. Photographs taken down from walls. Books boxed up. Her entire life dismantled piece by piece. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Dinner tomorrow night? Your father is making his famous pot roast. Another text from Rachel. You won't believe what one of my students said today. Call me. Kendall stared at those texts with tears blurring her vision. She couldn't tell them the truth. Couldn't explain why she was about to disappear from their lives. Couldn't risk Garrett following through on his threats if she stayed. She booked a flight using her credit card, knowing she would max it out, but not caring. The flight was to Portland, but not to any clinic. Just to the airport, where she would figure out her next step. Somewhere Garrett couldn't find her. Somewhere far enough away that her family would be safe. She was nearly finished packing when 3 sharp knocks rattled her apartment door. Kendall froze. It was nearly midnight. No one should be at her door. She moved to the peephole and felt her heart stop. A woman stood in her hallway. Tall, elegant, dressed in clothes that cost more than Kendall's monthly rent. Even through the distorted fisheye lens of the peephole, Kendall recognized her from engagement photographs that had appeared in Seattle magazine. Genevieve Lancaster. The knocks came again, harder. Kendall Rivers, I just want to talk for a moment. Genevieve's voice filtered through the door with practiced charm. No need to be frightened. Kendall's hand moved toward her phone, but before she could grab it, she heard metal scraping against her lock. He was picking it. She was actually breaking in. The door swung open, and Genevieve stepped inside like she had every right to be there. 2 men followed her, broad-shouldered and blank-faced. Professional security. You're making a mistake, Genevieve said conversationally. My wedding cannot have complications. Get out of my apartment. Kendall's voice came out thin, terrified. I'm calling the police. One of the security men was faster. He plucked the phone from her hand with practiced ease and crushed it under his heel. Genevieve examined Kendall's half-packed belongings with clinical interest. So Garrett gave you money. That was generous of him, really. But you're still here. Still pregnant. Still a problem that needs resolving. I'm leaving. Kendall backed toward her bedroom. Tonight. I'm disappearing. You'll never hear from me again. Oh, I know you are. Genevieve's smile was cold. But I needed to make sure you understand just how serious we are about you staying gone. You see, I've known about Garrett's pathetic affair for months. I had him followed, documented, analyzed. I don't care who he sleeps with. Our marriage is a business arrangement, nothing more. She moved closer. But I do care about timing and optics. A pregnant mistress surfacing 3 weeks before my wedding creates exactly the kind of scandal that could make nervous investors reconsider their positions. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take that money, get on your flight tomorrow, and vanish so completely that Garrett has no reason to think about you ever again. I already said I'm leaving. I know. But you need to understand what happens if you ever come back. If you ever try to contact him. If you ever try to claim those children are his. Genevieve gestured to her security men. My family doesn't make threats we aren't prepared to follow through on. Kendall tried to run. Tried to lock herself in her bedroom. But the security men moved with professional efficiency. She felt hands grip her arms. Felt herself being forced into a chair. Furniture crashed as she struggled. Her hip slammed into the coffee table. Her head cracked against something hard. Pain exploded through her skull. The world tilted sideways. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her completely was Genevieve straightening her designer coat, like nothing had happened. When Kendall woke, fluorescent lights burned her eyes. Machines beeped steadily. A blood pressure cuff squeezed her arm automatically. Hospital. A nurse appeared, kind-faced and concerned. Hey there. Welcome back. You had us worried for a bit. How are you feeling? Kendall tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her head felt like it was splitting open. What happened? Where am I? You're at Harborview Medical Center. Your neighbor called 911 after she heard furniture breaking and found you unconscious in your apartment. Looks like you took a pretty bad fall. Fall. The word landed heavy. She hadn't fallen. She'd been attacked. But Kendall looked at the nurse's kind face and made a decision in that moment. I was packing. I tripped. So clumsy. The nurse's expression suggested she didn't quite believe that, but she nodded anyway. The doctor will want to examine you. You have a mild concussion. But there's good news. We did an ultrasound just to be safe, and your babies are perfectly fine. 2 strong heartbeats. Relief crashed over Kendall so powerfully she started
When the
crying.
doctor left her
They're
alone
okay.
after the
Both of them.
examination,
Both of them.
Kendall lay
The
in
nurse
that sterile
confirmed with a
hospital
smile.
bed
And made the most important decision of her life. She could stay and fight. She could file police reports and make accusations and try to hold Garrett and Genevieve accountable. But that would keep her in Seattle. That would keep her family at risk. That would mean years of legal battles while pregnant and then with newborn twins. Or she could disappear so completely that neither Garrett nor Genevieve would ever have a reason to think about her again. She chose survival. She chose her baby's future over justice. She chose to become someone Garrett Ashford would never find. The next morning, Kendall checked herself out of the hospital against medical advice. She withdrew everything from her bank accounts. She bought a bus ticket using cash, paying extra to make sure the destination stayed off any digital records. And Kendall Rivers ceased to exist in every way that mattered. The woman who eventually stepped off that bus in Portland 3 days later carried a new identity, Garrett's blood money, and a determination to turn his cruelty into something he could never destroy. Portland welcomed Kendall with gray skies and rain that felt cleansing somehow. She found a room in a boarding house that didn't ask for identification, just cash up front. The room was small, barely big enough for a bed and a dresser, with a shared bathroom down the hall. But it was hers. It was safe. She had time before the babies came. 5 months to figure out how to survive as a single mother with no family, no support system, and no safety net beyond the money Garrett had given her. For the first month, Kendall did nothing but rest and think. Her body was healing from the assault. The concussion symptoms gradually faded. The twins grew steadily, their movements becoming more pronounced. She would lie on her narrow bed with her hands on her stomach, feeling them shift and kick, and whisper promises. I'm going to give you everything. You're going to have a life where you're wanted, where you're safe, where nobody ever makes you feel like you're a problem to be solved. I promise. When she felt strong enough, Kendall started looking for work. But 9 months pregnant with twins made her essentially unemployable for anything requiring physical labor. No restaurant wanted to hire a waitress who might go into labor mid-shift. No retail store wanted someone who couldn't stand for 8 hours. She found work doing data entry from the boarding house's shared computer. Tiny jobs posted on freelancing websites. $5 to transcribe an audio file. $10 to format a spreadsheet. $20 to write product descriptions. She worked 12-hour days hunched over that computer, earning barely enough to cover her room and food. The money Garrett had given her stayed untouched in a bank account she opened under her new legal name. She had gone to the courthouse and filed for a name change, citing safety concerns from a domestic violence situation. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, had barely looked up. New name? Kendall Lancaster. She took Genevieve's surname with bitter irony. Let them share that, at least. The babies came on June 15th, 2 weeks earlier than expected. Kendall was alone in her boarding house room when her water broke. She called 911, grabbed the bag she had packed weeks earlier, and rode to the hospital in an ambulance with a paramedic who kept asking where her partner was. He's not in the picture, Kendall said. It's just me. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain so consuming she forgot her own name, forgot where she was, forgot everything except the overwhelming need to bring her children safely into the world. Owen came first. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Dark hair, serious eyes, a cry that sounded almost questioning. Levi came 8 minutes later. 5 pounds, 11 ounces. Dark hair like his brother, but with an expression that seemed ready to take on the world. The nurse placed both babies on Kendall's chest, and she looked down at them through tears that wouldn't stop falling. Hi, she whispered. Hi, my loves. I'm your mama. We're going to be okay. I promise we're going to be okay. But lying in that hospital bed holding her newborn sons, Kendall had no idea how she was going to keep that promise. The first year was survival in its most basic form. Kendall moved from the boarding house to a tiny studio apartment that cost $700 a month. The entire space was barely 300 square feet. Her bed folded down from the wall. Owen and Levi shared a crib in the corner. There was a kitchenette with 2 burners and a mini fridge. The bathroom was so small she had to stand sideways to close the door. But it was theirs. Daycare cost more than her rent. Kendall found a woman named Mrs. Chun who ran an unlicensed daycare out of her apartment, charging rates low enough that Kendall could almost afford it. Mrs. Chun was in her 70s, spoke limited English, but loved children with the fierce devotion of someone who had raised 5 of her own. Kendall worked 3 jobs that first year. She waitressed breakfast and lunch shifts at a diner 6 blocks from her apartment. She cleaned offices at night after the boys were asleep, bringing them with her in their stroller and setting up a makeshift bed in whatever office she was cleaning. She continued doing data entry whenever she had a spare moment. She operated on 3 hours of sleep per night. Coffee became her primary food group. Her body existed in a constant state of exhaustion, so profound it felt normal. The boys hit their milestones and she missed half of them because she was working. Owen took his first steps while Mrs. Chun was watching him. Kendall cried when Mrs. Chun told her, mourning a moment she could never get back. But she kept going. She fed her babies. She kept a roof over their heads. She made it through each day, and then the next, and then the next. Other mothers at the park would chat about their partners, about dividing childcare responsibilities, about date nights and couples therapy, and whose turn it was to wake up with the baby. Kendall would smile and nod and say nothing about how she was doing all of it alone. The loneliness was worse than the exhaustion sometimes. She had no one to call when Owen spiked a fever at 2 in the morning. No one to share Levi's first word with. No one to reassure her that she was doing this right. Her family believed she was dead or had abandoned them. She couldn't reach out without potentially putting them at risk. So she carried that grief too, along with everything else. But during the boys' nap times and late into the nights after they finally slept, Kendall did something that would change everything. She educated herself. She took $20,000 from Garrett's blood money and bought textbooks. Business school textbooks that cost $300 each. She bought online courses in finance, investment strategy, market analysis. She filled notebooks with case studies and theories and models. Kendall had spent 18 months as Garrett's executive assistant. She had sat in on board meetings, had reviewed his investment proposals, had watched him evaluate startups and make decisions about where to put his money. She had absorbed more about venture capital and corporate strategy than she realized. Now she studied with the intensity of someone whose children's futures depended on it. Because they did. She taught herself to read balance sheets and evaluate cash flow projections. She learned about market trends and competitive positioning. She studied successful venture capitalists and analyzed their strategies. Her photographic memory, the same skill that had made her invaluable as an assistant, allowed her to retain everything she read. She could recall specific passages from textbooks, could cross-reference theories from different sources, could see patterns and connections. When Owen and Levi were 8 months old, Kendall received a letter that changed everything. It came to the post office box she had set up under her legal name. The envelope was thick, expensive paper, sent from a law firm in San Francisco. Inside was a letter that began, "Dear Ms. Lancaster, formerly Ms. Rivers." Her hands shook as she read. The letter explained that a tech billionaire named James Thorne had passed away 4 years earlier. His will had included instructions for his attorneys to locate his biological daughter, Kendall Rivers, regardless of how long the search took. James Thorne had been Kendall's biological father, the man who had abandoned her mother before Kendall was born, the man she had never met, had never wanted to meet, had considered irrelevant to her life. But he had thought about her. In his final years, drowning in guilt about the daughter he never knew, he had left her something in his will, an inheritance of $8 million, and a 5% stake in Thorne Capital Ventures, the venture capital firm he had founded 30 years earlier. Kendall read that letter 3 times, certain she was hallucinating from sleep deprivation. $8 million, a stake in a VC firm, from a father she had never known. The lawyers required proof of identity, DNA testing, extensive documentation. It took 3 months to verify everything. 3 months of paperwork and legal processes and background checks. And then the money appeared in her account. $8 million. Kendall stared at her bank balance on the library computer and started laughing so hard she scared the librarian. Most people would have taken that money and lived quietly, invested conservatively, bought a house, secured their children's futures, never worked another exhausting shift. But Kendall had spent 8 months studying venture capital. She had spent 18 months before that watching Garrett build his empire. She had learned to see opportunities where others saw risk. And she had something to prove. When the boys were 10 months old, Kendall made her first major investment. There was a clean energy startup called SolarBridge that had developed revolutionary battery storage technology. 3 founders, all women, all under 30, none with traditional pedigrees or connections to elite academic institutions. The current management at Thorne Capital Ventures had passed on investing. Too risky, they said. Unproven team. Crowded market. Kendall saw what they couldn't see. The technology was legitimate. The founders were brilliant. They were being overlooked because old men running traditional VC firms couldn't see past their gender and youth. She used $4 million to buy a substantial stake in SolarBridge. It was a terrifying gamble. If she was wrong, she had just lost half her financial security on a single bet. If she was wrong, she was back to 3 jobs and a studio apartment and hoping the money lasted until her boys were old enough for public school. She wasn't wrong. 18 months later, a major utility company acquired SolarBridge for $200 million. Kendall's stake was worth $30 million overnight. She was in the studio apartment when the notification email arrived. The boys were napping. She read the email once, then again, then a third time. Then she screamed with joy so loudly she woke both babies. They started crying. She picked them both up, dancing around the cramped studio with a baby on each hip, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she told them. "We're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay." But Kendall didn't stop there. Money alone didn't make her powerful. What came next required something much more difficult than financial risk. It required stepping out of hiding and claiming her father's legacy publicly. When Levi and Owen were 18 months old, Kendall showed up at Thorn Capital Ventures headquarters with her ownership stake and demanded a board seat. The boardroom fell silent when she walked in. 6 men in expensive suits stared at the young woman with 2 toddlers in a double stroller. "Gentlemen," Kendall said, taking a seat without being invited. "I'm Kendall Lancaster, James Thorne's daughter, and your new board member. We need to talk about how badly you've been managing my father's firm." The chairman, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an entitled expression, actually laughed. "Miss Lancaster, I don't think you understand how this works." "Oh, I understand perfectly." Kendall pulled out a folder thick with documentation. "I understand that you've missed 12 major investment opportunities in the last 2 years. I understand that your portfolio's returns are 15% below industry average. I understand that you're still operating with the same strategies my father used 30 years ago, which means you're essentially irrelevant in today's market." She slid documents across the table. "I've prepared a comprehensive analysis of every investment decision this firm has made in the last 3 years. I've identified exactly where you're failing and why, and I'm here to fix it." "With all due respect," the chairman said, "you're 27 years old with no formal business education and 2 babies. What exactly qualifies you to evaluate our strategies? I turned $4 million into $30 million in 18 months. What have you done lately?" The battle for control of Thorn Capital took a full year. Kendall built coalitions with other frustrated investors. She recruited brilliant analysts from overlooked backgrounds. She positioned herself not just as her father's heir, but as someone with a genuinely superior vision for the firm's future. She made presentations to investors while Owen and Levi sat in the corner playing with blocks. She took conference calls during nap times. She reviewed investment proposals after midnight while her sons slept. The old guard fought her every step. They dismissed her as inexperienced. They called her aggressive and difficult, code words they never used for male executives. They tried to intimidate her into backing down. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Kendall had survived Garrett's threats and Genevieve's violence. She had given birth alone and raised twins on 3 hours of sleep. She had rebuilt her entire life from nothing. A boardroom full of entitled men was barely a challenge. By the time Owen and Levi turned 3, Kendall had 1. She was managing director of Thorn Capital Ventures. She had tripled the firm's assets under management. She had built a reputation as one of the most successful venture capitalists in her sector. Financial press called her a prodigy. Forbes ran a profile titled "The Woman Who Sees What Others." Mississippi TechCrunch called her the most exciting investor under 30. None of them knew about the envelope of blood money that started it all. None of them knew about the man who had threatened to destroy her family if she kept her pregnancy. None of them knew that every successful investment was driven by the memory of being dismissed, threatened, erased. She made investments in startups led by founders others overlooked. Women, people of color, immigrants, anyone solving real problems rather than chasing hype. She built a portfolio of companies that actually mattered. And she built a life for her sons. A real house with a yard. A nanny named Judith who loved the boys like her own grandchildren. Stability and safety and everything Kendall had promised them in that hospital bed. But there was a cost. She missed Owen's first day of preschool because she was in a board meeting. She missed Levi's first soccer game because she was closing a deal in San Francisco. She spent so many evenings working late that the boys started asking Judith to put them to bed instead of waiting for Mama. Kendall was building an empire, but she was also building walls around her heart. She dated occasionally, but never seriously. Never anyone who might get close enough to hurt her. Never anyone who might want more than she could give. When Owen and Levi were 3.5, she met Dr. Owen Hartley. Pediatrician, kind, stable, everything Garrett wasn't. He pursued her gently, patiently, won over the boys with genuine affection rather than performance. They dated for a year. He proposed over dinner at a restaurant where Levi spilled an entire glass of milk and Owen cried because he didn't like the music. It wasn't romantic. It was real. And Kendall said yes because Owen deserved someone who showed up, and so did she. But the engagement sat on her finger like a weight she couldn't quite carry. She kept finding reasons to delay setting a date. Too busy with a new investment. The boys needed stability, not change. Maybe next year. Owen Hartley was patient. But Kendall knew, even if she wouldn't admit it, that she was holding back. That some part of her was still standing in Garrett's office, still holding that envelope, still hearing those threats. She had built an empire from his cruelty, but she hadn't actually healed from it. And then, for years after disappearing from Seattle, Kendall received an invitation that would force every carefully buried truth back to the surface. Ashford Industries' annual charity gala. Benefiting Children's Hospital Foundation, Seattle Grand Fairmont. Her assistant had flagged it because Riverstone Investments, the holding company Kendall had created for her various ventures, had recently acquired a major stake in a biotech firm that Ashford Industries was courting. Attending would be strategic for business. Avoiding it would raise questions. Kendall stared at that invitation for 3 days. Garrett's name printed in elegant script. His company. His event. His world that she had escaped from. She made her decision on a Thursday afternoon while watching Owen and Levi play in their backyard. They were building something elaborate with sticks and leaves, their heads bent together in serious consultation. They looked so much like Garrett. The same dark eyes. The same focused intensity when they were concentrating. The same way of tilting their heads when confused. And they had started asking questions. Mama, why don't we have a daddy? Levi had asked the week before. Everyone at school has a daddy. You do have a father, Kendall had answered carefully. Sometimes families look different. Sometimes parents aren't together for grown-up reasons. But that doesn't mean you're not loved completely. Where is he? Owen had asked in his quiet, thoughtful way. Does he know about us? It's complicated, sweetie. But Levi, never one to accept non-answers, had pressed. Do you know where he is? Can we meet him? That conversation had haunted Kendall for days. So when the invitation to Garrett's gala arrived, she made a decision that terrified her. She was going to attend. Not for revenge. Not for closure. But because she was done hiding. She had built something Garrett couldn't touch. It was time to stop letting his threats dictate her movements. She would go to Seattle. She would attend his gala. She would show him exactly what she had become in his absence. What Kendall didn't plan on was her sons making a plan of their own. The week before the gala, Kendall told the boys she had a business trip to Seattle. Just one night. Judith would stay with them at the house. They would barely notice she was gone. Levi had looked up from his dinosaur collection with immediate interest. Seattle? That's where we used to live, right, Mama? Before you were born, yes. Owen, always more observant, had studied her face. You look scared, Mama. Why does this TRIP make you scared? Kendall had knelt down to their level, brushing Owen's dark hair back from his forehead. Sometimes grown-ups have to do things that feel hard. But I promise I'll be back tomorrow night. And we'll have pancakes for breakfast the day after, okay? With chocolate chips? Levi had demanded. With chocolate chips. That seemed to satisfy them. Or so Kendall thought. What she didn't know was that Levi had found the invitation while playing hide and seek in her home office. What she didn't know was that Owen had carefully photographed it with her tablet. What she didn't know was that her brilliant, determined, too clever 4-year-old sons had decided that if Mama was going to Seattle where they used to live, and if their daddy's name was on that invitation, maybe this was their chance to finally meet him. What she didn't know was that they had been listening to her phone conversations about car services and hotels, had heard her talk about flight times and addresses, had absorbed every detail the way children do when adults think they're not paying attention. The morning of the gala, Kendall stood in her bedroom trying on the midnight blue gown she had bought for the occasion. It was elegant, expensive, The kind of dress that announced you belonged in rooms full of power and money. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. For years ago, she had been Garrett's assistant. Competent, yes. Intelligent, yes. But always in someone else's shadow. Always supporting someone else's vision. The woman in the mirror now was different. She carried herself with authority earned through survival. Her success wasn't borrowed or reflected. It was hers. Judith appeared in the doorway with both boys. "You look like a princess, Mama," Owen said solemnly. "A warrior princess," Levi corrected. "Like the ones in our books who fight dragons." Kendall laughed and pulled them both into a hug, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "You two be good for Judith, okay? I'll call before bedtime." "We'll be so good," Levi promised with an expression of angelic innocence that should have been her first warning. The flight to Seattle was only an hour, but it felt like traveling back in time. Kendall watched the city appear below, the Space Needle rising among glass towers, Puget Sound gray and vast. Somewhere down there was the life she had fled from. The office where Garrett had threatened her. The apartment where Genevieve's security had attacked her. But also somewhere down there was her family. Her mother and father. Her sister Rachel. People who thought she had either died or abandoned them. Kendall had made contact 3 months ago. Had finally gathered the courage to call her mother from a blocked number and say the words she had been rehearsing for 4 years. "Mom, it's me. I'm alive. I'm safe. And I have so much to explain." That first conversation had lasted 5 hours. Her mother crying, then angry, then crying again, demanding to know where Kendall had been, why she disappeared, what had happened. Kendall had told them everything. About Garrett. About the pregnancy. About the threats. About Genevieve's assault. About the twins they didn't know existed. The silence after that confession had been devastating. Then her father's voice, rough with emotion. "Where are you? Give us the address. We're coming right now. It's not safe yet. Not while Garrett and Genevieve still have power. But soon. I promise. Soon." They had been meeting in secret since then. Her parents flying to Portland. Rachel visiting on weekends. Getting to know Owen and Levi, their grandsons and nephew they never knew they had. And they had been planning. Gathering documentation. Building a case. Waiting for the right moment to bring everything into the light. Kendall hadn't told them she was attending Garrett's gala. Hadn't wanted them to worry. This was something she needed to do alone. The Seattle Grand Fairmont was exactly as elegant as its reputation suggested. Kendall arrived at 7, when the gala was already in full swing. She checked her small evening bag at the coat check, kept only her phone and lipstick, and walked into the ballroom with her head high. Crystal chandeliers cast expensive light across 500 guests. Chamber music played from a string quartet in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than most people's dinners. Kendall accepted a glass of champagne and moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who belonged. She made small talk with a tech CEO about market trends. She exchanged business cards with a venture capitalist from San Francisco. She laughed at appropriate moments and said intelligent things about biotech innovations. No one recognized her. Why would they? She had been invisible 4 years ago. Just an assistant. Forgettable. And then she saw him. Garrett stood near the auction display, surrounded by admirers. He looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, commanding in his tuxedo, his dark hair slightly silver at the temples now. Distinguished. Powerful. Genevieve was beside him, sleek in a champagne-colored gown. They stood close, but not touching. Professional allies playing the role of devoted couple. Still engaged after 4 years, Kendall's research had told her. The wedding perpetually postponed for various business reasons. A relationship that existed in permanent engagement, useful for both their companies, but never quite progressing to actual marriage. Kendall watched them from across the ballroom and waited to feel something. Anger. Pain. The old heartbreak. Instead, she felt nothing except a distant curiosity. Like looking at strangers. Like watching actors in a play about someone else's life. She was turning away, ready to make her strategic business connections and leave, when Garrett's eyes swept the room and landed on her. He looked directly at Kendall. Directly at the woman whose life he had threatened, whose children he had demanded she abort. And his gaze moved right past her without the slightest flicker of recognition. That was when Kendall felt something. Not heartbreak. Something sharper. The confirmation that she had been so thoroughly erased from his consciousness that he couldn't even recognize her transformed. She had carried the weight of what happened between them for 4 years, had built her empire partly to prove she could survive him, had thought about him more than she wanted to admit, and he looked at her like she was a stranger. Kendall was processing that realization when chaos erupted near the ballroom entrance. 2 small voices cut through the chamber music and polite conversation like alarm bells. Excuse me, we need to find someone. Kendall's champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. No, it couldn't be. She spun toward the entrance and felt her heart stop completely. Owen and Levi stood hand in hand just inside the ballroom doors. They were wearing the dress shirts and slacks she had bought them for a wedding last month. Their hair was neatly combed. They looked tiny and determined and absolutely should not have been in Seattle. The entire ballroom was turning to stare at the unexpected appearance of 2 4-year-olds at a formal charity gala. Levi, always the bolder twin, spotted a small platform meant for displaying auction items. He pulled Owen with him and climbed up, raising his voice with the unself-conscious clarity of a child who had never learned to be afraid of attention. We're looking for our daddy. Our mama is here somewhere, and we know our daddy is supposed to be here too. A woman in an elaborate gown laughed nervously. Sweetheart, I think you're lost. Where are your parents? Owen held up the photograph Kendall kept in her office desk drawer. She recognized it even from across the room. Her and Garrett at a company event 3 months into their affair, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. We're not lost, Owen said in his careful, serious way. We found Mama's invitation. It had this address. We called a car service like we've seen Mama do. Kendall was already moving through the crowd, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Levi held the photograph higher. This is our mama from before. The man with her is our daddy. His name is Garrett Ashford. Is he here? The silence that crashed over that ballroom was absolute. Kendall saw Garrett's face go white, saw his hand start to shake so violently his scotch glass rattled. Saw Genevieve turn to stare at the boys with an expression cycling rapidly between shock and calculation and something that looked like terror. Levi spotted Garrett's reaction and pointed directly at him with a 4-year-old's devastating accuracy. That's him. That's the man from the picture. Are you Garrett Ashford? Are you our daddy? Kendall reached her sons and dropped to her knees, pulling them both against her chest with fierce protectiveness that came from pure instinct. Owen, Levi, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Portland with Judith. Owen touched her face gently, his dark eyes concerned. We wanted to find our daddy, Mama. You're always sad when you think about him. We thought if we found him, maybe you wouldn't be sad anymore. Levi nodded enthusiastically. We were really smart about it. We waited until Judith was making dinner, and we told her we were playing upstairs. But we went out the back door and called the car service from your phone. The driver asked if our mama knew, and we said yes, because technically you knew we wanted to meet our daddy, so it wasn't really a lie. Kendall stared at her brilliant, impossible, beautiful children and didn't know whether to hug them or ground them for the rest of their lives. Across the ballroom, Garrett was moving toward them with unsteady steps. His face had gone from white to gray. His eyes were locked on the twins with an expression of absolute devastation. He stopped a few feet away, swaying slightly like the floor had become unstable. Kendall. The word came out strangled. Is it? Are they? Don't. Kendall stood slowly, her arms still wrapped protectively around Owen and Levi. Don't you dare ask questions you have no right to answers for. But Owen, with his thoughtful, gentle nature, was already studying Garrett with intense curiosity. Are you our daddy? You look like the man in Mama's picture. Levi stepped forward boldly, unafraid. We're 4 years old. Our birthday is June 15th. Mama says our daddy doesn't know we exist because sometimes grown-ups make things complicated. But we're not complicated. We're just kids who want to know their daddy. Kendall watched those words hit Garrett like physical blows. Watched him do the mental calculation. June 15th. 4 years ago, 9 months after she disappeared. His children, the babies he had demanded she abort, standing right in front of him. Alive. Real. Asking if he was their father. I didn't know, Garrett breathed. Kendall, I swear, I didn't know you kept them. I thought you went to the clinic. I thought. You thought your money and threats worked, Kendall finished coldly. You thought you erased your problem. Genevieve moved forward then, her professional mask firmly back in place despite the panic Kendall could see underneath. Perhaps we should take this conversation somewhere private. We're creating quite a scene. Oh, I don't think so. A new voice cut through the tension like a blade. Kendall turned to see her sister Rachel pushing through the crowd, followed by her mother and father. All three of them looked furious and protective and absolutely ready for war. Rachel, Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? Her mother reached them first, pulling Kendall and the twins into a fierce embrace. Did you really think we wouldn't follow you? Did you think we'd let you face this man alone? Her father stepped forward, his construction-roughened hands clenched into fists. He looked at Garrett with an expression of pure contempt. You threatened my daughter. You told her you'd destroy our family if she didn't abort her pregnancy. And when she refused, your fiancé had her assaulted. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Phones were coming out. People were recording. That's a lie, Genevieve started, but Rachel cut her off. We have hospital records. We have police reports that Kendall finally filed last month. We have documentation of everything. Rachel turned to address the crowd directly, her teacher voice carrying clear authority. This man threatened to destroy my sister's career, our mother's nursing license, our father's business, all because Kendall refused to abort the children she was carrying. His children. When threats weren't enough, his fiancée sent security to assault Kendall in her own apartment. She woke up in a hospital with a concussion while pregnant with twins. The ballroom exploded into shocked whispers. Phones were definitely recording now. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. Kendall's mother stepped forward, small but absolutely fierce. Unlike 4 years ago, our family can't be threatened anymore. You see, our daughter didn't just survive you, Mr. Ashford. She became more successful than you ever were. Riverstone Investments? Thorn Capital Ventures? That's all Kendall. She's been systematically building an empire while you've been playing house with your fake engagement. Garrett looked like he might actually collapse. His eyes moved between Kendall, the twins, her family, the recording phones, as if he couldn't process how his carefully controlled world had detonated so spectacularly. Genevieve's composed expression had finally cracked completely. She was scanning the crowd, clearly calculating how to contain this damage, and coming up empty. Can we just pause here for a moment? Because what happens next is important. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, if you've ever had to fight for your worth, this moment is for you. Kendall spent 4 years building herself into someone who couldn't be threatened or erased. And now, in front of 500 witnesses, the truth was finally coming out. Hit that like button if you believe survivors deserve to be heard. Share this story with someone who needs to know that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you build from the broken pieces. And comment below. Where are you watching from? Or just tell me I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline. Because this community is built on people who refuse to stay down. Now let me tell you what Kendall said next. She looked at Garrett across that ballroom, with her sons pressed against her sides, her family standing protective behind her, and 500 cameras recording every word. You want to know them? You want to be their father? Then listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Her voice carried across the silent ballroom with devastating clarity. 4 years ago, you handed me $75,000 and told me to abort my pregnancy. You threatened to destroy my mother's career, my sister's job, my father's business. You made it clear that my choice was to eliminate your children or watch everyone I loved suffer. So I took your money and I disappeared. I gave birth to Owen and Levi alone in a hospital where no one knew my name. I raised them on 3 hours of sleep and 3 jobs while you married her and built your empire on the foundation of families you threatened. Garrett's face was wet with tears now. I didn't know Genevieve would hurt you. I never wanted that. I was just trying to protect my company. You were protecting yourself, Kendall corrected. Don't pretend it was noble. You were terrified and selfish, and you made choices that nearly destroyed me. But here's what you didn't count on. I survived. I thrived. I turned your blood money into an education and your cruelty into motivation. I built something you can never touch. She glanced down at Owen and Levi, who were watching with wide, confused eyes. But these boys deserve better than your absence and my anger. So here are my terms. You want any relationship with Owen and Levi? You get comprehensive therapy. You end whatever toxic arrangement you have with her. She gestured at Genevieve. You do real work on becoming someone worthy of knowing these children. And maybe in a year or two, we can discuss supervised visits. But you don't get to waltz into their lives just because they're adorable and ask a question. What if I refuse? Garrett asked hoarsely. Then you never see them again. Kendall's voice was steel. And if you ever threaten my family again, I will destroy everything you've built so thoroughly that losing your company will seem gentle. I have more money, better connections, and 4 years of understanding exactly how your business operates. The only reason I haven't already dismantled Ashford Industries is because revenge stopped mattering when I had 2 beautiful boys to raise. Don't give me a reason to remember why I wanted to. The ballroom was silent except for the click of camera phones and the quiet sobbing of several guests who were clearly moved by the confrontation. Kendall took Owen's hand, then Levi's. We're leaving now. Come on, boys. Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Rachel are taking us for ice cream. But what about our daddy? Levi asked, looking back at Garrett with confusion. Your daddy has a lot of work to do before he's ready to be in your life, Kendall said gently. But that's grown-up stuff. Right now, we're going to celebrate that you two are the bravest, smartest, most impossible children in the entire world. As they walked toward the exit, Kendall looked back one more time. Garrett was on his knees in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by shocked guests and recording phones, his entire world crumbling around him in the most public way possible. Genevieve stood frozen, her perfect facade completely shattered, clearly calculating how this scandal would destroy years of careful planning. And Kendall felt nothing except exhaustion and relief that the secret was finally out, that she could stop hiding, that her boys had finally asked their question and gotten an answer, even if it wasn't the simple answer they'd hoped for. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they walked out into Seattle night air. You were magnificent in there, baby. I was terrified, Kendall admitted. Terrified and magnificent, her father said, his voice thick with emotion. We're so proud of you. So damn proud. Rachel walked beside the twins, holding their hands. So, boys, chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Both, they said in unison, and everyone laughed despite the tears. Behind them, inside the ballroom, Garrett Ashford remained on his knees, watching through the glass doors as the family he had thrown away walked out of his life for the second time. But this time, he knew exactly what he was losing. And this time, there was no one to blame but himself. The aftermath of that night hit like a tsunami. By the time Kendall got the boys back to her hotel room, #Ashford Scandal was already trending on 3 different social media platforms. Videos of the confrontation had been viewed over 2 million times. News outlets were picking up the story. Business reporters were calling it the most dramatic public downfall of a tech CEO in Seattle history. Kendall sat on the hotel bed with Owen and Levi on either side of her. Both boys finally crashed from the adrenaline and excitement of their adventure. They had eaten ice cream with their grandparents, had been showered with hugs and ISC for being brave, and now they were asking the questions she had been dreading. Mama, is our daddy a bad person? Owen asked quietly. Kendall chose her words carefully. Your daddy made some really bad choices for years ago. He was scared and selfish, and he hurt people. He hurt me, but that doesn't mean he's all bad. People are complicated, sweetheart. They can make terrible mistakes and still have the chance to become better. Levi, always more direct, cut to the heart of it. Does he want to know us? I think he does, Kendall said honestly. But wanting something and being ready for it are different things. Your daddy has a lot of work to do on himself before he's ready to be the father you deserve. What kind of work? Owen asked. The kind where you talk to someone who helps you understand why you made bad choices and how to make better ones. The kind where you take responsibility for the people you hurt. The kind that takes a long time and is really, really hard. Levi considered this seriously. Like when I had to apologize to Marcus for taking his truck, and then I had to play nice with him for a whole week before he trusted me again. Kendall smiled despite everything. Exactly like that. Except your daddy has to apologize for much bigger things, so it's going to take much longer than a week. Owen leaned his head against her shoulder. Are you still sad about him, Mama? Kendall wrapped her arms around both her boys. I was sad for a long time. But you know what? I'm not sad anymore. I'm grateful. Because if things had been different, I might not have you too. And you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than being rich? Levi asked. So much better than being rich. They fell asleep shortly after, curled against her sides like they used to when they were babies. Kendall lay awake between them, listening to their breathing, processing everything that had happened. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop. Messages from business associates expressing support. Emails from reporters requesting interviews. Voicemails from people she hadn't heard from in years. And one text message from an unknown number that made her heart stop. "I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know I'm going to do the work. Whatever it takes. However long it takes. Not because I deserve a relationship with them, but because they deserve a father who's worthy of them. I'm starting therapy tomorrow. I'm ending my engagement. I'm doing everything you said. Please don't cut off all possibility of me knowing them someday. Please." It was from Garrett. It had to be. Kendall stared at that message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Words were easy. Garrett had always been good with words. What mattered now was action. The next morning, Kendall flew back to Portland with her boys and her family. Owen and Levi chattered excitedly about the adventure, about seeing Seattle, about the big fancy party, about meeting their daddy, even though it was confusing. Her mother sat beside her on the plane. "What are you going to do now, baby?" Kendall watched the clouds through the window. "I'm going to go home. I'm going to get back to normal life. I'm going to let Garrett prove whether he's serious about change or just scared of public scandal. And if he is serious, then maybe, eventually, we'll talk about what comes next. But I'm not holding my breath. Men like Garrett don't actually change. They just get better at performing change." Her mother squeezed her hand. "People can surprise you sometimes. Not always in good ways. But sometimes they do the work and become different." Kendall wanted to believe that. She really did. The media storm continued for weeks. Every business publication ran stories about the Gala confrontation. Some portrayed Kendall as a vindictive ex trying to destroy Garrett's reputation. Others portrayed her as a survivor finally getting justice. Most just reported the facts and let people draw their own conclusions. Ashford Industries stock dropped 15% in 3 days. Several board members resigned. Major investors pulled back. The European company that had been circling for years smelled blood in the water and increased their takeover offer. Genevieve Lancaster released a statement through her lawyers categorically denying any involvement in assault or intimidation, calling the allegations unfounded and defamatory. But 3 days later, her family's firm quietly dissolved their business partnership with Ashford Industries. The engagement was officially ended. Genevieve disappeared from public view, and Garrett did exactly what he said he would do. Kendall knew because her lawyer, who she had hired to handle any legal fallout from the Gala, kept her updated on everything happening in Seattle. Garrett had enrolled in intensive therapy, 3 sessions a week with a trauma specialist who worked with executives dealing with ethical failures. He had stepped down as CEO of Ashford Industries, taking a consulting role that removed him from daily operations. He had sold his penthouse and moved to a modest apartment in a different neighborhood. He had made substantial donations to domestic violence prevention organizations and women's shelters. He was doing everything quietly, without press releases or public announcements. Not performing change for cameras, just doing the actual work. But Kendall didn't reach out, didn't acknowledge his efforts. She was done organizing her life around Garrett Ashford's choices. She focused on her boys and her work and her own healing. She started therapy too. Not because she was broken, but because carrying 4 years of trauma while building an empire meant she had never actually processed what happened to her. She had survived, but survival and healing were different things. Her therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chun, asked questions that made Kendall uncomfortable. What would it mean to forgive him? I don't know if I can. I'm not asking if you can. I'm asking what it would mean. What would forgiveness look like for you? Kendall had thought about that for a long time. It would mean accepting that what happened can't be changed. It would mean letting go of the anger that's been driving me for 4 years. It would mean acknowledging that he's a flawed human being who made terrible choices, not a villain in my story. That sounds like wisdom. It feels like betraying myself. Like saying what he did was okay. Forgiveness isn't saying what he did was okay. It's saying you're not going to let what he did continue poisoning your present. Those words stayed with Kendall. 3 months after the Gala, she received a formal letter from Garrett's attorney, not asking for visitation rights or making demands, just requesting permission to send monthly updates about his therapy progress and personal work. No expectation of response, Just information, in case she ever wanted to know. Kendall approved the request. The first update arrived 2 weeks later. A letter from Garrett's therapist, with his permission, outlining the work they were doing, examining his fear of vulnerability, unpacking his need for control, addressing his pattern of valuing business success over human relationships, understanding the generational trauma from his own father's emotional absence. It was clinical, professional, and clearly real work, not performance. The second update came a month later. This one from Garrett himself, not asking for anything, just sharing what he was learning. I'm understanding now that I treated you as a problem to be managed rather than a person I loved. I used my power to control a situation that scared me instead of being brave enough to face it honestly. I destroyed something real because I was more committed to looking successful than to being good. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm finally seeing how badly I failed you. Kendall read that letter 3 times before filing it away. Owen and Levi asked about their father occasionally, but without urgency. They had full lives. Preschool, friends, activities, grandparents who spoiled them, an aunt who took them on adventures. The absence of a father was notable, but not devastating because they were surrounded by love. Still, sometimes Levi would ask, "Is our daddy doing his work so he can meet us?" And Kendall would answer honestly, "He's trying very hard. We'll see if he keeps trying." 6 months after the gala, something unexpected happened. Dr. Owen Hartley, Kendall's fiancé, asked to meet for coffee. Just the two of them. Serious conversation. Kendall knew what was coming before he said it. Owen was kind about it. Gentle, but honest in the way good people are when they're ending something that isn't working. "I love you, Kendall. I love the boys. But I don't think you're in love with me. I think you're grateful for stability and you appreciate what we have. But when you talk about your work, your family, your boys, you light up. When you talk about us, about our future, you look tired. That's not fair. I do love you. I know you do. But not the way someone should love a partner. And I deserve someone who's all in. Not someone who's still processing trauma from 4 years ago." The broken engagement hurt less than it should have, which proved Owen's point. They parted as friends. He hugged her tight and whispered, "I hope you find what you're actually looking for. I hope you heal all the way, not just enough to function." After he left, Kendall sat in her car and cried. Not for the relationship ending, but for the recognition that she had been using Owen as a shield against actually dealing with her feelings. He deserved better. She deserved better. That night, she wrote a letter to Garrett. The first direct communication in 6 months. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive you completely. I don't know if you'll ever actually become someone worthy of knowing Owen and Levi. But I'm willing to keep watching you do the work. I'm willing to leave the door open a crack. Not for you. For them. Because they deserve the chance to have a father if you can actually become one." She sent it through her lawyer and tried not to think about it. Garrett's response came 3 days later. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve. I won't waste this chance." Time moved forward the way it does when you stop fighting it. Months became seasons. Seasons became a year. Owen and Levi turned 5. Kendall threw them a birthday party with their preschool friends, their grandparents, their Aunt Rachel, and her new boyfriend. It was chaotic and loud and full of laughter. That night, after the boys were asleep and the mess was cleaned up, Kendall sat in her backyard with a glass of wine and let herself feel grateful. She had survived the worst thing that ever happened to her. She had built a life that mattered. She had raised 2 remarkable boys who were kind and curious and confident. Garrett's absence from their birthday was notable, but his presence wouldn't have made it better. They didn't need him to be complete. But a week after their birthday, a package arrived. Inside were 2 gifts. For Owen, a telescope with a book about constellations. For Levi, a complete dinosaur encyclopedia with incredibly detailed illustrations. The note was simple. "Happy 5th birthday. I hope these bring you joy. I'm still doing the work. Still hoping someday I can give these to you in person." Owen loved the telescope immediately. He set it up in the backyard and spent an hour staring at the moon, calling Kendall over every few minutes to see something amazing. Levi carried the dinosaur book everywhere for a week, memorizing facts and sharing them with anyone who would listen. They asked if the gifts were from their daddy. Kendall said yes. "Can we say thank you?" Owen asked. Kendall thought about that request carefully. Then she set up her laptop and helped them record a short video message. "Hi Garrett," Levi said to the camera. "Thank you for the dinosaur book. Did you know that the Argentinosaurus was probably the biggest dinosaur ever, and it was like 90 feet long? That's longer than our house. Owen held up his telescope. Thank you for this. I saw 3 craters on the moon last night. And Mama says if we go somewhere dark with no city lights, I'll be able to see Jupiter. They waved at the camera and ran off to play before Kendall could overthink whether sending the video was a good idea. She watched it 3 times. Her boys. Being generous and kind to a man who didn't deserve their generosity. She sent the video through her lawyer with a brief message. The boys wanted to say thank you. Garrett's response came as a voicemail. He was crying. Thank you for letting them. Thank you for raising them to be kind even when they have every reason not to be. Thank you for not poisoning them against me. I know I don't deserve any of this. I'm going to keep working to become someone who does. 14 months after the Gala confrontation, Kendall received a request that made her pause for a long time before responding. Garrett's therapist was recommending that he might be ready for a supervised visit. Just an hour. In a family therapy center. With a professional mediator present. No pressure. No expectations. Just a chance to meet the boys in a structured, safe environment. Kendall talked to her own therapist about it. What's your hesitation? I don't want him to hurt them. I don't want them to build a relationship with someone who might disappoint them. That's a legitimate fear. But you can't protect them from all disappointment. And keeping them from their father because you're afraid protects you more than it protects them. That observation stung because it was true. Kendall talked to Owen and Levi. Really talked to them, in age-appropriate terms. Your daddy has been doing a lot of work to become a better person. He wants to meet you. Not at a big fancy party. Just at a place where families go to talk to each other. There will be other grown-ups there to make sure everything is safe. What do you think? Levi's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Yes, I want to meet him for real. Not just in a big room with lots of people. Owen was more thoughtful. Will you be there, Mama? I'll be right there the whole time. Then okay. I want to meet him too. The family therapy center was designed to be non-threatening. Comfortable furniture. Toys in the corner. Big windows with natural light. The mediator was a kind-faced woman named Jennifer who specialized in facilitating reunification between parents and children. Kendall arrived early with Owen and Levi. The boys were nervous and excited, their hands gripping hers tightly. Garrett arrived exactly on time. He looked different, older somehow, though it had only been 14 months. His hair was grayer. His face was thinner. He moved with less confidence and more humility. He stopped several feet away, clearly unsure of the protocol. Hi, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me this chance. Owen and Levi studied him with serious expressions. Jennifer, the mediator, suggested everyone sit down. She facilitated introductions, helped navigate the awkwardness, created space for genuine conversation. Garrett asked the boys questions about their interests. Listened when they answered. Didn't try too hard. Didn't perform. Just genuinely engaged. Owen told him about the telescope. About the moon's craters and how he wanted to see Saturn's rings. Garrett listened with complete attention. I had a telescope when I was your age. I used to stay up past my bedtime looking at stars. My father didn't understand why I cared about things millions of miles away when I should be focused on practical things right in front of me. Did that make you sad? Owen asked with his characteristic emotional intelligence. It did. I think I spent a lot of my life trying to make my father proud by being practical and successful. And I forgot that the things millions of miles away matter too. The impractical things. The beautiful things. Levi showed Garrett his dinosaur encyclopedia. Shared his favorite facts. Asked if Garrett liked dinosaurs. I didn't know much about them until recently, Garrett admitted. But I've been learning. Did you know that scientists think some dinosaurs might have had feathers? Levi's eyes went wide. Really? Which ones? They talked about dinosaurs for 15 minutes. Genuine conversation. Connection forming. Kendall watched from her chair against the wall. Jennifer caught her eye and gave a small nod of approval. This was going well. Better than well. At the end of the hour, Levi asked the question Kendall had been dreading. Can we see you again? Garrett looked at Kendall. The question clear in his eyes. She took a deep breath. If you want to, and if Garrett keeps doing his work, then yes. We can visit again next month. The joy on Garrett's face was almost painful to witness. He didn't try to hug the boys. Didn't overstep. Just said thank you and told them he couldn't wait to see them again. After he left, Owen asked Kendall a question that showed he understood more than she gave him credit for. Mama, Were you scared this whole time? A little bit, she admitted. But you let us come anyway? Because being brave means doing things even when you're scared. You're really brave, Mama. So are you, buddy. So are you. The visits became monthly, then bi-weekly, always supervised, always structured, but gradually less awkward. Garrett brought books about constellations and read them with Owen. He brought dinosaur models and assembled them with Levi. He asked about school and friends and favorite foods. He never asked about Kendall, never tried to discuss their past. Kept everything focused on the boys. And slowly, carefully, Owen and Levi built a relationship with their father. It wasn't perfect. Levi had a meltdown one visit because Garrett didn't understand that he needed advance warning before transitions. Garrett froze, clearly out of his depth, until Jennifer coached him through it. Owen went through a phase of testing whether Garrett would keep showing up. Acted indifferent, gave one-word answers, seemed bored. Garrett didn't take it personally. Just kept being consistent. After 6 months of supervised visits, Jennifer recommended they try a semi-supervised visit. Garrett could take the boys to a park for 2 hours. Kendall would be present, but at a distance. Not hovering. That visit happened on a Saturday in September. Kendall sat on a park bench with a book she didn't read, watching Garrett push the boys on swings, help them navigate the climbing structure, sit in the grass while they showed him interesting rocks. Her mother appeared beside her, settling onto the bench with her own coffee. How are you doing, baby? I don't know. Kendall watched Levi show Garrett a bug he found. This is harder than I expected. Watching him be a decent father after he demanded you abort them? Watching him be imperfect, but trying. It would be easier if he was still terrible. Then I could justify keeping them apart. But he's actually doing the work. Her mother followed her gaze. People are complicated. They can be the worst version of themselves for years and then, if they really commit, become someone different. Doesn't erase the harm. Doesn't mean you have to forgive. But it means the story doesn't have to end where it started. Do you forgive him? For what he put our family through? No. Her mother's voice was firm. But I can acknowledge he's trying to be better. And I can support my grandsons having a relationship with their father if that father is willing to put in the actual work. They sat in silence, watching Garrett teach Owen how to pump his legs on the swing to go higher. I broke up with Owen, Kendall said quietly. Dr. Hartley. We ended the engagement. Her mother didn't look surprised. Because you didn't love him enough? Because I was using him as a shield. He deserved better. And what do you deserve, baby? Kendall thought about that question. I deserve to heal all the way. Not just enough to function. All the way to thriving. Then maybe that's your work right now. Not facilitating Garrett's relationship with the boys. That's just logistics. Your work is figuring out who you are when you're not defined by what he did to you. Those words stayed with Kendall. That night, after the boys were asleep, she sat down and made a list of everything she had accomplished in the past 5 years. Built a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio. Became managing director of a venture capital firm. Raised 2 remarkable children. Reconciled with her family. Survived assault and betrayal. Created a life that mattered. Every single one of those accomplishments had been motivated at least partly by proving Garrett wrong. By showing she could survive him. By building something he couldn't destroy. What would she build if she wasn't building against him? What would she create if she was creating for herself? The question felt revolutionary. 18 months after the gala, Kendall made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She called Garrett directly. Not through lawyers. Not through mediators. Just his cell phone number that she had never deleted. He answered on the second ring. Kendall? I want to meet. Just us. To talk. Okay. When? Where? Tomorrow. There's a coffee shop near the waterfront in Seattle. 2 o'clock. I'll be there. The next day, Kendall drove to Seattle alone. No lawyers. No family. No mediators. Just her and the man who had threatened to destroy her life 5 years ago. Garrett was already there when she arrived. Sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee, one black and one with cream and sugar. He stood when she approached. I didn't know how you take your coffee now. So I got both. It's a small thing. But it showed he understood he didn't know her anymore. Kendall sat down and took the coffee with cream and sugar. It was exactly right. They sat in silence for a moment. 5 years of history sitting between them like a physical presence. Thank you for meeting me, Garrett said finally. I know you didn't have to. I need to say some things. And I need you to just listen. Can you do that? Yes. Kendall took a deep breath. 5 years ago, You told me to abort my children or watch my family suffer. You used your power to try to control me. You treated me like I was a problem instead of a person you claimed to love. And when I wouldn't comply, your fiancé had me assaulted. I woke up in a hospital with a concussion while pregnant with your children. That trauma doesn't go away just because you've been in therapy for 18 months. I know. Garrett's voice was quiet. I built everything I have from your cruelty. Every investment, every success, every moment of strength. It was all fueled by proving you wrong, by showing I could survive you. And that worked. It got me through. But I'm realizing that building my entire identity around what you did to me means I'm still letting you control my story. Kendall. I said listen. She held up her hand. I'm not done. He nodded. I don't know if I'll ever completely forgive you. Some wounds scar over, but they never fully disappear. But I'm choosing to let go of the anger because carrying it hurts me more than it hurts you. I'm choosing to acknowledge that you're doing real work to become better. And I'm choosing to allow Owen and Levi to have a relationship with you. Not because you deserve it, but because they deserve the chance to know their father if that father is willing to be worthy of them. Thank you. Garrett's eyes were wet. I know I don't deserve any of this. You don't. But they do. This isn't about you, Garrett. It's about them. Everything moving forward is about them. I understand. Kendall took a sip of her coffee. I also need you to understand something else. You hurt me deeply. You threatened my family. You demanded I erase our children. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life hating you. Because hate is exhausting. And I have better things to do with my energy. Like what? Like building a life that matters. Like raising two boys who understand that people are complicated. Like creating things that have nothing to do with you. Like healing all the way instead of just enough to function. Garrett smiled sadly. You've become extraordinary. You were always brilliant. But now you're formidable in ways I can't even comprehend. I had to be. You made sure of that. They sat in silence again. But this time it felt different. Less hostile. More honest. Can I say something now? Garrett asked. Kendall nodded. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was a coward. I chose business over love. I chose protection over courage. I chose cruelty over compassion. And I've spent 18 months understanding that those choices came from a lifetime of learning that success mattered more than people. My father taught me that. And I became exactly like him. The kind of man who sacrifices everything human for achievement. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you? No. It's supposed to explain. Not excuse. Explain. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just trying to help you understand that I wasn't a monster. I was a deeply broken person making monstrous choices. Everyone's broken, Garrett. That doesn't justify what you did. I know. But understanding why I did it helps me make sure I never do it again. Kendall studied his face. He looked different. Not just older. Softer somehow. Less armored. Are you actually different? Or are you just performing different because it's what the situation requires? Garrett considered the question seriously. I think I'm actually different. But I also think time will tell. I can't prove I've changed with words. Only with consistent action over years. That's probably the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Therapy teaches you that performing change is easier than actual change. But performance doesn't last. I'm trying to do the real work. The hard work. Keep doing it. Because the moment you stop, the moment you disappoint those boys, I will end whatever relationship you're building with them. I understand. They finished their coffee talking about logistics. Visit schedules. Boundaries. Expectations. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was progress. As Kendall stood to leave, Garrett asked one more question. Are you happy? Really happy? Not just successful. Actually happy. She thought about that. I'm getting there. I have moments of real joy. My boys make me laugh every day. My family surrounds me with love. My work matters. But I'm still healing. Still figuring out who I am when I'm not in survival mode. I hope you find that. Whatever happiness looks like for you. Me too. 2 years after the gala, life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Owen and Levi were 6 now. First grade. Reading chapter books. Asking complicated questions about everything. They saw Garrett twice a month. Sometimes at the therapy center. Sometimes at parks. Once, for a whole afternoon at a children's museum. The relationship was growing. Slowly. Carefully. But genuinely. Garrett had sold his company. Taken the buyout offer from the European firm. Used the money to fund a foundation supporting single mothers in crisis. Spent his time consulting for ethical business practices. completely rebuilt his life around different values. Kendall had let go of most of her anger. Not all of it. Probably never all of it. But enough that she could think about Garrett without her chest tightening. Enough that she could watch him with the boys without wanting to intervene every second. She had also started dating again. Nothing serious. Just allowing herself to be open to connection. Reminding herself that not every man who showed interest was Garrett. And she had started writing a book about her experience. About survival and rebuilding and the complicated nature of forgiveness. Not to make money. Just to process. Just to tell her story on her own terms. One afternoon in November, Kendall picked up the boys from a visit with Garrett. He walked them to her car, helped them buckle their seat belts, then asked if they could talk for a minute. They stood in the parking lot while the boys played a game in the back seat. "I want to ask you something," Garrett said, "and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Completely? Or is this as far as we get?" Kendall thought about that question for a long time. "I don't know. Some days I think I already have forgiven you. Other days I remember waking up in that hospital and I feel the anger all over again. Forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a process. And my process is ongoing. That's fair. But Garrett, this relationship we have now, where we can talk civilly and co-parent those boys, this is more than you deserved. This is grace. Don't mistake it for full reconciliation. I don't. I never will." "Good." She started to get in her car, then turned back. "Actually, I want to ask you something too. Anything. Do you ever regret it? The life we could have had if you'd made different choices 5 years ago?" Garrett's face crumpled slightly. "Every single day. I think about the alternate timeline where I was brave. Where I chose you. Where I got to be there when they were born. Where I didn't miss their first words and first steps. Where we built something real together. I think about it constantly. Does it help? Thinking about it? No. But it reminds me why I'm doing this work. So I don't keep making choices I'll regret for the rest of my life." Kendall nodded. "Good answer." As she drove home with the boys chattering about their day with Garrett, Kendall realized something profound. She had won. Not by destroying him. Not by revenge. But by surviving. By building a life so full of purpose and love that Garrett's betrayal became just one chapter in a much longer story. That night, after the boys were asleep, Kendall sat down and wrote the final chapter of her book. So what's the moral of my story? It's not that everyone deserves a second chance. Some people don't. It's not that forgiveness heals all wounds. Some scars stay forever. It's not that love conquers all. Sometimes love isn't enough. The moral is this. You are not defined by what was done to you. You're defined by what you build from the broken pieces. Strength isn't never falling. Strength is deciding to stand back up. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so completely, radiantly yourself that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant to your joy. I didn't need Garrett to fail for me to succeed. I didn't need his apology to heal. I didn't need his presence to be whole. But when my sons needed a father, I was strong enough to allow healing to begin. That's the difference between revenge and resilience. Revenge says you hurt me, so I'll hurt you back. Resilience says you hurt me, but I'm going to thrive anyway. Revenge ties you to your pain forever. Resilience transforms pain into purpose. I spent 2 years planning Garrett's destruction. I had the money, the connections, the inside knowledge to dismantle his empire completely. And I almost did. But I chose differently. Not because he deserved mercy, because I deserved peace. And that choice changed everything. 3 years after the gala, something unexpected happened. It was Owen and Levi's 7th birthday. Kendall threw their usual party. Friends from school, family, chaos and cake. Garrett had been invited to a separate, smaller celebration the following weekend. Boundaries still mattered. The boys having a relationship with their father didn't mean he got access to every moment of their lives. But halfway through the party, Levi pulled Kendall aside. "Mama, can Garrett come to this party? Just for a little while? Owen and I talked about it, and we want him to meet our friends. We want him to see our house. We want him to be part of our real life, not just the visit life." Kendall looked at her son's hopeful face. Then at Owen, who was watching anxiously. "Let me think about it, okay? That's a big change." After the party, Kendall talked to her therapist about it. "What's your resistance?" "I'm afraid of him becoming too integrated. Of the boundaries dissolving. Of going back to a place where he has power to hurt us." "Do you actually believe he would hurt them now?" "No. But I didn't believe he'd hurt me 5 years ago either. And he did. Fair. But you're not making decisions based on who Garrett is now. You're making decisions based on who he was then. That observation hit hard. Kendall talked to her family. Rachel thought it was too soon. Her father was skeptical. Her mother surprised everyone by saying, if the boys want it and you feel safe enough, maybe it's time. Ultimately, Kendall called Garrett. The boys want you at their next birthday party. The real one. With their friends and family. Not a separate visit. She heard his sharp intake of breath. Are you comfortable with that? I don't know. But they asked. And I'm trying to make decisions based on what they need, not what I'm comfortable with. If you're not ready, I can wait. I can explain to them that some things take time. No. Come to the party. But Garrett, if you do anything to make them uncomfortable, if you overstep even slightly, it's the last party you ever attend. Understood. The party happened 2 weeks later. Garrett arrived with gifts and uncertainty. Kendall's family was polite but watchful. The boys were thrilled. And something shifted. Watching Garrett interact with Owen and Levi's friends, seeing him talk to other parents about normal kid things, observing him exist in their actual life rather than in controlled visits, Kendall realized he really had changed. He wasn't the man who threatened her 5 years ago. He was someone different. Still flawed. Still carrying his past. But genuinely doing the work to be better. After the party, after everyone left, after the boys were asleep, Garrett helped Kendall clean up without being asked. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Thank you for letting me be here today, Garrett said finally. I know it wasn't easy. The boys wanted you here. That's what mattered. Still, thank you. Kendall threw away a pile of paper plates and turned to face him. I've been thinking about something my therapist said. She told me I'm making decisions based on who you were, not who you are. And I've realized she's right. Garrett stopped cleaning, giving her his full attention. 5 years ago, you were a coward who chose business over people, who used power to control instead of courage to connect, who hurt me in ways I'll never fully get over. But that's not who you are now. And I need to acknowledge that. I'm still the person who did those things. I still carry that guilt. Yes. But you're also the person who spent 3 years doing intensive therapy, who sold his company to fund a foundation, who shows up consistently for our sons without asking for credit, who respects boundaries even when they're painful. That's growth. That's actual change. Garrett's eyes filled with tears. Does that mean you forgive me? Kendall considered the question. It means I'm choosing to see you as a whole person. Someone who made terrible choices and is working to make better ones. It means I'm letting go of the anger that was protecting me, but also poisoning me. It means I acknowledge your growth. Is that forgiveness? I think it's close enough. Close enough for us to co-parent effectively. Close enough for the boys to have a real relationship with you. Close enough for me to move forward with my life. What about us? Is there any possibility of? No. Kendall's voice was gentle but firm. Too much damage. Too much history. I don't love you, Garrett. I probably never will again. But I can respect you. I can work with you. I can appreciate the father you're becoming for our sons. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But it's what I'm willing to give. They finished cleaning in silence. Before Garrett left, he turned back. For what it's worth, you're the most remarkable person I've ever known. What you've built from what I tried to destroy. How you've raised those boys to be kind despite having every reason to teach them bitterness. Who you've become. It's extraordinary. I didn't become extraordinary because of you. I became extraordinary despite you. There's a difference. I know. And that difference is exactly why you're extraordinary. After he left, Kendall stood in her quiet house and felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Peace. Real, deep, lasting peace. Not because Garrett had changed. Not because he'd apologized. Not because justice had been served. But because she had done the hardest work of her life. She had survived trauma. She had built an empire. She had raised 2 remarkable children. She had reconciled with her family. She had processed her pain instead of just carrying it. And she had chosen resilience over revenge. So let me ask you something. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed, you will survive. I promise you that. If you're watching this and you feel broken, you will rebuild. It won't be easy. It won't be quick. But you will. If you're watching this as someone who made terrible mistakes, change is possible. But it requires real work. Not just words. Not just performance. Actual, difficult, consistent work over years. And even then, forgiveness isn't guaranteed. But becoming better is still worth it. Kendall's story is remarkable. But you know what? So is yours. Every single person watching this has survived 100% of their worst days. That's not luck. That's strength. Maybe you're a single parent working 3 jobs and wondering if you'll make it. You will. Kendall did. Maybe you're someone who lost everything and can't see how to rebuild. You can. Kendall did. Maybe you're someone carrying trauma that feels too heavy. You can heal. Kendall did. Or maybe you're someone who hurt people and wants to make amends. Start now. Do the real work. Garrett did. This is why I created Mr. Hearthline Stories. Because everyone has a story. Everyone is fighting battles others don't see. And when we share these stories, when we connect through them, we remember we're not alone. I want to know your story. Have you survived betrayal? Have you rebuilt from nothing? Have you granted a second chance or chosen not to? Whatever your story is, this community wants to hear it. Before you go, I need 3 things from you. First, hit that like button if Kendall's story touched your heart. Every like tells me you want more stories about real strength, real resilience, real people overcoming real obstacles. Second, subscribe to Mr. Hearthline Stories and turn on notifications. Because every week I bring you stories that matter. Stories that remind you of your own strength. Third, comment below. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. I want to see how far this community reaches. Or share one word that describes how this story made you feel. Or just type "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline" to let me know you're part of this family. And if this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to know that broken doesn't mean defeated. Someone who needs to remember their own strength. 5 years after that October night when Garrett Ashford told Kendall Rivers to abort her pregnancy or watch her family suffer, Owen and Levi are thriving. They're 7 years old now. Smart, kind, curious, confident. They have a mother who would move mountains for them. Grandparents who spoil them. An aunt who takes them on adventures. And a father who shows up consistently, who's doing the work, who's earning their trust one day at a time. Kendall built an empire from $75,000 in blood money. She turned threats into motivation and betrayal into purpose. She survived assault and single parenthood and crushing exhaustion. And she did more than survive. She thrived, not because she destroyed the man who hurt her, but because she built a life so full of love and meaning that his cruelty became just one chapter in a much longer, more beautiful story. That's the lesson. You are not defined by what was done to you. You're defined by what you build from the broken pieces. Strength isn't never falling. It's deciding to stand back up. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so completely yourself that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant to your joy. Kendall didn't need Garrett to fail for her to succeed. She didn't need his apology to heal. She didn't need his presence to be whole. She just needed herself, her strength, her resilience, her refusal to stay down. And that's available to you too. Whatever you're facing, whatever broke you, whatever you're rebuilding from, you have that same strength inside you. Maybe you can't see it yet. Maybe you're still in the middle of the breaking, but it's there. I promise you it's there. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Kendall's story. Thank you for being part of this community. Remember, your story isn't over. Your next chapter is waiting, and you are stronger than anything that tried to break you. I'm Mr. Hearthline, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep writing your own incredible story.